The anniversary dinner reservation was perfect. Our favorite restaurant, a table by the window, and 15 years' worth of memories to celebrate. I left work early, picked up a bouquet of her favorite lilies, and even dusted off the old suit she loved. But when I walked into the house that evening, everything changed. The lights were dimmed, and the soft hum of a romantic playlist played in the background. At first, I thought she'd beaten me to the surprise, but then I noticed the faint laughter coming from upstairs, a voice I didn't recognize. I froze, my mind racing. My first instinct was to ignore it, to brush it off as a misunderstanding. But something in the pit of my stomach told me to investigate. Slowly, I made my way upstairs, each step heavier than the last. When I pushed open the bedroom door, the scene in front of me made my heart stop. The woman I'd spent 15 years loving, trusting, and building a life with wasn't alone. The air felt thick, suffocating, as I stood frozen in the doorway. My eyes locked onto the scene before me, and every part of me wanted to believe it wasn't real. 15 years of marriage, a decade and a half of shared memories, struggles, and triumphs shattered in an instant. She looked up, her face going pale, her expression shifting from shock to guilt. The man beside her scrambled awkwardly, fumbling to grab his shirt, but I barely noticed him. My focus was on her. The woman I had vowed to love for better or worse, now caught in the worst betrayal I could imagine. The stakes weren't just about our marriage. This was about trust, respect, and everything I had built my life around. How could someone I thought I knew so completely turn out to be a stranger? Every late night she'd brushed off, every secretive text she'd claimed was work-related, every subtle shift in her demeanor over the past months, it all suddenly made sense. I had two choices: confront her immediately or walk away to gather my thoughts. My heart wanted to scream, but my mind told me to stay calm. The foundation of our relationship wasn't just cracked, it was obliterated. This wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and the life I deserved. The room was eerily silent, save for the muffled shuffling of the man beside her. He was muttering apologies, awkwardly attempting to button his shirt, but I didn't care about him. My eyes were locked on her, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as the woman I married, but as the person who had just betrayed everything we'd built. She opened her mouth, fumbling for words, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, my voice steady but ice cold. "Don't even try." Her face crumpled, guilt and panic written all over it. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, taking a step toward me. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Not what it looks like. Really? That's the best you've got." I gestured toward the man, who now stood awkwardly by the window, avoiding eye contact. I didn't realize our 15th anniversary was a group celebration. She flinched at my words, but I wasn't done. 15 years, I said, my voice growing sharper. 15 years, and this is how you honor it? This is how you honor us. Tears began streaming down her face, but they didn't move me. Not this time. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." "A mistake?" I repeated, the bitterness in my tone unmistakable. "Mistakes are accidental. This was a choice. Every text, every call, every time you lied to my face, it was all a choice." The man finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Look, I didn't know she was married." "Shut up," I snapped, my glare silencing him instantly. "You don't get to talk. This isn't about you. This is between me and her." I turned back to her, my voice quieter now but no less cutting. "I've ignored so much. All the late nights, all the excuses, all the lies. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. But I wasn't, was I?" She shook her head, her sobs growing louder. "No," she whispered. "You weren't." The admission hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I stared at her, the woman I once thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, and realized there was no going back. I stepped further into the room, the tension between us like a live wire. Her tears were streaming now, but they couldn't wash away the damage she had done. She kept shaking her head, mumbling apologies, but I was past the point of listening. Do you think this just happened? I said, my voice low but firm. Do you think you can explain it away with "I'm sorry" and expect me to forget it all? No, this didn't just happen, and you know it. Her lips quivered as she tried to respond. It wasn't supposed to be like this, James. I didn't mean. Stop lying. I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. You didn't mean for me to find out, is that it? You didn't mean for your lies to catch up with you? Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. You see, I said, scrolling through the gallery, I started noticing things. The late nights. The excuses. The way you were always so careful with your phone. So I decided to stop trusting her words and start looking for the truth myself. I held up the screen, showing her photos of her and the man beside her at a cafe, walking into a hotel, standing too close for it to be innocent. Her face paled as she stared at the evidence, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You think I didn't see this coming? I continued, my voice calm but razor sharp. 15 years, and you thought I wouldn't notice the cracks? I gave you every chance to come clean, and you chose to keep lying. So I did what you wouldn't. I found the truth. The man shifted uncomfortably, taking a step forward. Look, man, I had no idea she was married. I cut him off with a glare. I don't care what you knew or didn't know. You're not the problem here. She is. Turning back to her, I continued. This wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment mistake, was it? It wasn't one bad decision. This was a pattern, a choice you made over and over again. Her sobs grew louder, her hands trembling as she reached for me. Please, James, she begged, don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't leave me. I shook my head, the bitterness in my chest finally giving way to a cold clarity. Fix this? I said quietly. How do you fix trust that's been shattered? How do you fix years of lies? She had no answer. Her sobs filled the room, but they didn't move me. Not this time. The betrayal was too deep, the damage too permanent. I turned away from her, walking toward the dresser where I had placed an envelope earlier that morning. Picking it up, I turned back to face her. I told you I knew the truth, I said, my voice steady now. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed to prepare. I held the envelope in my hand, its weight symbolic of the decisions I had already made. So I did. What is that? She stammered, her voice shaking. I tossed it onto the bed between her and the man. Divorce papers, I said flatly.
Signed. Filed.
And effective as of this morning. Her face crumpled, and she reached for the envelope, as if touching it could undo the reality of it. No, she whispered, shaking her head. James, no. Please, we can work this out. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, Lisa. I cut her off sharply. You didn't just break my trust. You destroyed it. And trust isn't something you rebuild with empty apologies and promises you've already proven you can't keep. She froze, the envelope clutched in her trembling hands, her eyes wide with disbelief. I wasn't finished. By the way, I added, you might want to check your access to our accounts. You'll find them frozen. All joint assets are locked, and I've already spoken to the bank about transferring them into separate accounts. You'll get your share, don't worry. I'm not here to cheat anyone. My tone was cold, every word hitting like a hammer. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't stop. And him, I said, gesturing to the man still standing awkwardly by the window. He might want to check in with his wife. She already knows. I made sure of it. The man's face drained of color, his panic evident. Wait, what? You told her, he stammered. Yes, I said, turning my glare toward him. Because unlike the two of you, I believe in honesty. Lisa dropped the envelope, falling to her knees on the carpet, her hands covering her face as she cried. James, please, she begged through her tears. Don't do this. Don't walk away. We've been through so much together. We can find a way to make this work. I shook my head, my resolve unshaken. You don't understand, Lisa, I said, my voice soft but firm. I'm not walking away from you. I'm walking away from the lies, the betrayal, and the life I thought we had. I deserve better than this. And so do you? With that, I turned toward the door. By the time I come back tomorrow, I said over my shoulder, I expect you to be gone. I stepped out of the bedroom, leaving Lisa crumpled on the floor, her sobs echoing behind me. The sound didn't sting the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt distant, like the final chapter of a book I was closing for good. But before I could leave entirely, I stopped at the living room table, picking up one last item, a framed photo of our wedding day. I stared at it for a long moment, taking in the smiles, the joy, the love that had once felt so unshakable. Then, with a quiet resolve, I turned the frame face down and walked toward the door. Lisa's voice called out from the bedroom, desperate and broken. James, please don't leave me. We can fix this. I'll change, I promise. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. For a brief moment, I almost turned back. Almost. But then I reminded myself of all the lies, the nights I spent doubting my own instincts, the betrayal that had shattered everything we had built together. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cool evening air hit my face, carrying with it a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of my doubts and insecurities lift, replaced by a quiet determination to move forward. As I walked to my car, I glanced up at the sky. The sun had set, but the faint hues of orange and pink still lingered, painting the horizon with the promise of a new beginning. I started the engine, the hum of the car steady and reassuring. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror as I drove away, and with it, so did the memories of the life I was leaving behind. There was no anger, no bitterness, only a quiet acceptance of the truth. This wasn't the future I had envisioned, but it was a future I could finally embrace. The road stretched endlessly before me, an open canvas waiting to be filled. For the first time in a long time, I felt ready to paint something new, something honest, something real. I didn't look back. I didn't need to.